I cut out 2 brim pieces with 1/2 inch seam allowances and 2 interfacing pieces without the seam allowance. The same thing with the band pieces, 2 pieces from the outer fabric with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then 2 interfacing pieces without the seam allowance. The back ribbon pieces can be smaller or bigger than this, but this is what I was able to cut out of my remaining fabric. I cut out 2 of these pieces, and this is going to be like this, one side on the fold, and I'm going to sew this end. This side is going to attach to the headband, and there is this shaping for the other end. This is the interfacing I used. I like to use any medium to heavyweight fusible interfacing for my hat making. This one is from Pellon, and this is non-woven kind. My fabric is 100% linen. It's a bit wrinkly, so I'm going to iron it before I fuse the interfacing. And this is my ironing organza fabric dedicated to fusing interfacing. And I only put this side on the bottom so that my iron doesn't get the glue from the interfacing. I'm going to leave this untouched until it cools down, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other pieces. Now I'm going to sew the brim with right sides together. I'm going to sew this outside edge all the way around. While I'm at the sewing machine, I'm going to go ahead and sew the top side of the band. I'm going to put these pieces with right sides together and fold the side seam allowances to the wrong side. The top of the band is this straight edge, so I'm going to sew this edge with 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I'm sewing a long line, I'm pulling the fabric this way and also this way to keep the fabric taut between the hands. This is to avoid the 2 layers of fabric shifting while you sew. I'm rolling out the seam so that the seam is at the edge. I'm going to do this all the way around, then iron, but only iron the edge and then don't go over the edge of the seam allowance inside, because that's going to make the imprint on the outside. On one of the rounded edges, I'm going to fold up the seam allowance. Next, I'm going to top stitch the outer edge of the brim. And also I'm going to make the bows in the back by folding the piece in half and sewing the raw edges with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I decided to add some wire on the edge. This is a millinery wire. It's wire covered with fabric used for hat making. I bent the edge so it's rounded. I'm going to slide it between the fabric and the seam allowances. Now I'm going to add this curved side of the band to this side of the brim. Make sure the wire is not in the seam allowance. For the bow in the back, I'm going to fold this piece in half, like this, and then sew this with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to sew this seam with 1/2 inch seam allowance, but when you're sewing right next to the wire, go very slowly to avoid hitting the wire with the needle. I'm going to push the wire a little bit, make the clear path for the needle. On this back bow, I'm going to make a pleat here so that this will fit here. Then I'm going to top stitch it in place. Now you can stitch these closed by hand, or you can top stitch it on your sewing machine.